The Sunner front was dying. Burning wreckage littered the black, fractured void where once the Vorgon coalition had held the line 500,000 kilometers of defensive grids. Railgun nests and carrier arrays now reduced to drifting debris and sporadic flashes of detonation. The Kryn Empire had pushed harder in the last 40 hours than in the past 4 years. For Commander Ralzak Thune, it felt like watching his own blood seep from a wound he couldn't close. He stood at the edge of the bridge, rigid under the weight of command, 4 crimson eyes scanning the holomap with a quiet that unnerved his crew. His exo-armor, cracked and scorched from a boarding skirmish 6 hours ago, hissed with every movement, but he refused to take it off. The scent of oil, smoke, and scorched circuitry lingered like a curse in the stale air of the warship Trenzar's Wrath. 17 vessels remain in Grid Sector 4. Rasped Tactical Officer Drav, his voice dry and defeated. We've lost orbital integrity over Thetamoon. Kryn drones are feeding real-time telemetry to their siege carriers. Ralzak didn't respond. There was nothing left to command but death and delay. The war had been a slow bleed for decades. The Kryn and Vorgon, once balanced adversaries, had reached a point of deadlock where attrition mattered more than victory. Every inch of space won cost tens of thousands of lives. The battles were fought not for strategic ground, but for psychological dominance, a game of whose civilization could afford more ruin. The commander clenched a gloved fist behind his back. He had seen glory in his youth flagships bristling with pride, parades of honor, legacies written in stars. Now, he was a gravekeeper at the edge of an open pit. A junior officer called out from comms. "Commander, we're receiving an encrypted signal. Designation -non-affiliated origin, Sol. System. Human?" Ralzak frowned. The Terrans confirmed. Murmurs rippled across the bridge. The humans had been a curiosity to most galactic powers. New to the stars, they had stayed out of the wars, choosing instead to trade minerals and microtech while ignoring territorial disputes. Polite, quiet, bizarrely independent. No major civilization had ever seen a single human vessel on a battlefield. Ralzak exhaled slowly. Open the channel. A voice came through low, deliberate, and completely unshaken by the chaos surrounding the system. "This is Captain Elias Morrow of the Terran warship Goliath. We are entering the center combat zone, requesting temporary operational command authority for the duration of our engagement. No greetings, no explanation, just steel." Ralzak's second heart skipped a beat. "Tell them this is an active war front. They're entering unapproved." The human replied within seconds. "Understood. We're not requesting approval, only cooperation. You may remain on your current vector or fall back. Your discretion." Tactical feeds surged. Dozens of Kryn ships were now moving toward the newly arrived signature at the system's outer rim. They weren't concerned. Whatever this Goliath was, the Kryn must have assumed it was another diplomatic vessel, small, soft. Then the visual came online. A ship emerged from the shadow of the dying star massive. Angular, silent. The Goliath dwarfed every vessel. In the sector, it wasn't shaped like the ornate crescents of Kryn war cruisers or the sleek talon forms of Vorgon craft. It was a dark, monolithic block of brutal design, bristling with weapon arrays and what appeared to be kinetic accelerators. The length of city towers. Its hull was matte black, absorbing sensor scans like a void. It made no attempt to jam or cloak. "It didn't need to," Ralzak whispered. "What kind of ship is that?" Drave's eyes were wide. It's a battleship, sir." "No." Ralzak shook his head. "That's not a battleship. That's a statement." More data streamed in. The Goliath was supported by no fleet, no escort ships, no carriers. It was a lone and advancing directly toward the Kryn siege line without slowing. The Kryn, at first dismissive, began repositioning. 3 full carrier wings shifted formation to intercept. Ralzak activated a private channel to the Terran vessel. "Captain Morrow, you are heading into the densest concentration of Kryn firepower in the sector. Even a ship your size, the Masuta, UHS, the Masuta, UHS, Masuta, Maroes, lived ceases, L. Ma, UHS, Ma, UHS, KIT Morrow, UHS, KITH, Y Morrow, we see, if Bali Putty Sid, we see me you, in the sex it, by so wise, I will bay me evs, by what it's an it, like it's said to cut with I ass it, pick a copy to me it to suit it, like I seek you to I lived it's could you sick it to sit I side it to like to pie it's to but leak and IDTs to the leak. Voice returned, calm. We're aware. Ralzak hesitated. Why now? Why here? A pause, then, because you're losing. The line cut. The Kryn opened fire. Plasma bursts and charged lances rained toward the Terran ship, but none made contact. The Goliath didn't dodge. It let the weapons approach and then, impossibly, intercepted them mid-flight with auto-deployed point defense bursts that moved faster than any known algorithm could predict. Several Kryn weapons detonated prematurely, sending feedback surges through their own targeting systems. Then the Goliath fired. There was no visible buildup, no charging, just a tremor in space as one of its forward cannons released a single kinetic slug the size of a freight train. The slug moved at relativistic speed and passed through 2 Kryn destroyers before they even registered the impact. Both vessels split apart in silence, internal pressure and flames blooming like grotesque flowers in the dark. Another slug. A carrier went dark, then exploded from within. EMP ripple. Internal detonation. No one could tell. Within 3 minutes, 6 Kryn warships had been annihilated. Ralzak's bridge was dead silent. The Kryn began to retreat, not in order, but in chaos. Entire wings broke formation and scattered. Shields still powered, but flight. Vectors erratic. "Sir," said Drav, voice barely audible. "They're fleeing." For the first time in 40 hours, Ralzak sat down. Messages from other sectors flooded in. Kryn captains requesting ceasefire. Others asking if this human ship was a new Vorgan weapon. One command outpost simply sent a single word: help. A final message came from the Goliath, addressed to Ralzak. You are advised to consolidate your remaining fleet behind our trajectory. Do not attempt to join the next assault vector. We operate independently. Ralzak leaned forward, watching as the Goliath accelerated again. It was pushing toward the Kryn command ship, to over 10,000 kilometers out. Open a direct line, he said. Captain Morrow's face appeared on screen. Human, pale, hair close-cropped. His expression was unreadable, eyes focused beyond the display as if he were already analyzing the next 10 steps. Ralzak said, "You should know. The Kryn won't run forever." Morrow didn't blink. They won't have the chance. And when they retaliate, Morrow leaned slightly forward. They won't. The line ended. On the tactical display, the Goliath engaged a second Kryn battle group. This time, the humans didn't just fire slugs. Swarms of microdrones launched from its dorsal ports, too small, to track, too fast to follow. The Kryn ships began to misfire, some spiraling, others detonating from within without ever being struck externally. Ralzak couldn't look away. He thought of the centuries of war. The endless deadlock, the futile loss. Then he thought of Earth quiet. Unassuming Earth, the race that had watched the galaxy burn and said nothing. Until now, he turned to Drav, voice distant. We thought they were peaceful. Drav nodded slowly. They are, until they aren't. In the cold silence of space, the Goliath advanced without resistance. A black Leviathan cutting a new path through an old war. And the galaxy, for the first time in living memory, began to understand fear. The interior of the Goliath was as severe as its exterior bare metal, muted lights, and a silence that hummed with restrained violence. There were no banners, no symbols of allegiance, no unnecessary ornamentation. It was built not for morale or spectacle, but for function. Every bulkhead, every conduit, every reinforced door served a purpose. And within its silent heart, Captain Elias Morrow stood still as a monument, eyes fixed on the tactical sphere rotating slowly above the command dais. For Kryn Group's repositioning ahead of Vector, said Tactical Officer Vincent Hale, voice flat, casual. Looks like they finally believe we're not diplomats. Morrow didn't respond immediately. He wore the expression of a man not watching. A battle unfold, but a puzzle being solved. Cold, focused, detached. His uniform was simple, matte gray, devoid of insignia save for a black strip along the left shoulder with 3 faint silver bars. Command rank. His hands rested behind his back, gloved fingers motionless. They'll test our perimeter before committing full retreat, Morrow said. 2 flanks, forward decoy. Classic Kryn. Prepare fusion slugs, 8 on standby. No pre-target lock. Nodded. He'd served under Morrow long enough to recognize the tone, anticipatory. Not aggressive. Not excited, calculated. There was never a tremor in the man's voice, never an unnecessary syllable. Some captains barked orders to assert control. Morrow didn't need to. Control simply settled around him like gravity dot from his station. Hal tapped into the fire control suite. Slug batteries 1 through 4 primed. Adjusted spread vectors. Targeting delay initiated. We'll give them the illusion of incompetence. A small smile tugged at the edge of his mouth. Morrow turned slightly toward him. You're enjoying this? I enjoy what works, sir, Hale replied. And making empires panic using only. For shots and some silence, that works. Outside, the void bloomed with new motion. Kryn decoy drones formed a loose formation ahead of the main carrier line. To the untrained eye, it would appear as a full assault vector. Tomorrow, it was noise. He watched them for 10 seconds, expression unchanged. Then, disregard the decoys. Isolate carrier signatures. Slug 3-bottom launch tube. Full rail acceleration. The Goliath shuddered, just once. No warning. No countdown across thousands of kilometers. A single slug exited the ship's launch tube at a fraction below light speed. Within 3 seconds, it passed through a Kryn-heavy carrier, bisecting it from bow to engine core. The ship erupted silently, a plume of gas and fractured hull spinning into the darkness. The drones vanished either destroyed by the shockwave, or disconnected by the sudden command loss. Morrow said nothing. Hale exhaled. Confirmed kill. Minimal scattering. Next, let them react, Morrow said. Observe routing behavior. We'll learn more from what they choose to defend. The feed shifted. Kryn formations hesitated. Smaller support craft wobbled out of formation. 2 destroyers turned toward one another as if unsure which vector to follow. It was subtle but visible. They're fracturing, Hale said. They're not used to an enemy who doesn't broadcast intent, or one that doesn't consider them worth speaking to. Morrow added, below the command dais, an alert. Pinged. Communications, Sexternal Hale. Vorgon command vessel Trenzar's Wrath. Requesting update, Hele muttered, scanning the header. It's Commander Ralzek again. Patch it through. Audio only. The voice that followed was strained, less formal than before, a mixture of awe and hesitation. This is Ralzek Thune. We're observing your engagement patterns. Are these standard Terran tactics? Morrow answered without pausing. No. A long silence. Ralzek spoke again, slower. Then what are they? Morrow's reply was quiet, unveiled restraint. Channel cut dot in the silence that followed. Hale smirked. You do love your dramatic timing. Morrow finally turned from the display, walking the length of the command deck. His steps were soft against the deck plating. He passed other officers, each one silent, each one efficient, each one bearing the unspoken understanding that they were part of something far beyond protocol or pride. There was no room for ego aboard the Goliath. Only precision. Hale followed at a slight distance. Think the Kryn realize it yet? That they're not fighting a fleet? Hale nodded. Morrow stopped. They're not fighting at all. They're dying in formation. More Kryn vessels attempted to rally. 2 cruiser groups engaged flank maneuvers, likely trying to encircle the Terran ship. Morrow returned to the center. Deus, release drone cloud, he said, from the underbelly of the Goliath. Hundreds of microdrones poured forth, tiny, nearly invisible, coated with aggressive AI autonomy. Each one was shaped like a needle, coated in anti-detection polymers, armed with singular electromagnetic warheads. They didn't fire beams, they didn't make noise. They simply drifted, undetected, into engine vents, reactor rooms, bridge corridors, and exploded with surgical precision. The Kryn cruisers convulsed on the holofeed. Entire sections of enemy ships blinked out. Not detonated, disabled, systems fried. Guidance lost. One cruiser began to drift into its own wingmate, colliding in a blossom of fire and metallic splinters. Hale watched the carnage unfold. You know what I find funny? Morrow didn't answer, but Hale continued. We're not doing anything they couldn't have done themselves. They've just ... forgotten how to think. They've relied on numbers for too long, Morrow said. Size, fear. Routine empires rot when they forget how to adapt. Another Kryn battleship attempted to escape, turning tail and burning for deep space. The Goliath didn't follow. It didn't need to. Morrow's eyes narrowed. Let it go. Hale raised an eyebrow. Sir. Let it spread the story. As the command deck settled into quiet observation, the sensors displayed a sudden anomaly. No signature entering the sector. No Kryn ID, no Vorgen flag. Hale looked up sharply. Another contact. Unaffiliated. Morrow studied the telemetry. Small ship, civilian class. Broadcasting an open channel. The transmission buzzed to life across all frequencies. This is a live broadcast from Free System Network Relay 7. We are recording this engagement for Galactic record. Hey, muttered journalists. The AI voice continued. Confirmed. Visual of Terran vessel designation Goliath. Combat logs recording. Public distribution in progress. The galaxy is watching. Morrow gave the faintest nod. Good. He stepped back from the display. Begin data offload to the civilian relay. Let them see everything. Real-time feed. You sure about that? Hele asked. No mystique, no censorship. Fear doesn't require mystery. It requires certainty. Morrow turned away from the command dais. They need to know we didn't come to win a battle. We came to change the conversation. In the hours that followed, the Kryn fleet disintegrated. Scattered groups surrendered or self-destructed. Others fled without trajectory, breaking all formation and protocol. No attempt was made to rally. No reinforcements arrived by the standard metrics of war. The battle was already won. But Morrow knew this wasn't the end. It was the spark. He stood alone in his quarters later, helmet resting under one arm, gazing out at the fractured remnants of Kryn warships adrift in the void. The darkness of space stared back, and blinking, Eternal. Vincent Hale's voice came through over the intercom. "They're gone, sir. All of them. Command confirms local space secured." Morrow didn't reply immediately. When he did, his voice was low. "Send a message to Earth. What should I say?" Morrow looked out into the stars. "Tell them we're just getting started." Admiral Krevak stood motionless before the central holodisplay of the Kryn Imperial Command Vault. Mandibles clenched, eyes flaring with unreadable data overlays. The room around him throbbed with frantic voices, commanders, scribes all, speaking in clipped bursts of Kryn speech, throwing up logs and projections that contradicted each other with each passing minute. The air reeked of cold panic and ozone. The Admiral said nothing. He watched again as the feed replayed the same. 27 seconds of battle footage. A black Terran slug piercing one of their heavy carriers at relativistic speed. The ship tearing in half before its crew could even scream. Then came the drones, silent, microscopic, surgical. Systems blinked out. Bridge feeds vanished. Half of the fleet paralyzed within minutes. "Mute it," Krevak hissed. The room obeyed. The footage froze on the image of the human warship. Goliath, floating untouched amid a cloud of Kryn debris. Its hull bore no scorch marks, no signs of stress. Just that unholy black sheen, like a scar across the stars. That was not a battle, Krevak growled. That was a message. Across the chamber, war strategist Beckett, thinner and more composed than most, leaned forward on trembling claws. "Admiral, intelligence confirms the humans broadcasted their actions in real time. Civilian relays carried the footage to all major systems within the central galactic corridor. 17 non-aligned. Powers have begun strategic withdrawal from border regions. Vorgen forces are reorganizing under joint human leadership." "Leadership," Krevak snapped. "Yes, Admiral. The humans, They didn't request territory or surrender. They requested compliance." Krevak turned toward him, eyes glowing faintly. "The humans send one ship band, now the Galactic." Spine folds around them. Beckett hesitated. "It's not the ship they fear. It's what it implies." Krevak paced slowly, claws clicking against the obsidian floor. He was older than most in the command vault, one of the last veterans of the Iron Revolt. He had outmaneuvered starborn viruses, collapsed rebellions in deep void colonies, shattered fleets with sheer force of will. But this wasn't war as he understood it. "It's deception," he muttered. A faint They hide the rest of their power. No civilization builds one battleship without a dozen more. Perhaps, Beckett said cautiously. Or perhaps they only needed one. Silence hung in the air like smoke. Elsewhere, in the neutral observation lounge of the Varn High Council station, General Urax reclined in a gravity-suspended seat, arms folded across his chest, a snifter of thawed Ilaran bloodfruit in one hand. He wasn't watching the footage anymore. He'd memorized it within the first hour. He was watching the reactions. Dozens of alien representatives stood huddled around data feeds, species who'd spent centuries in cold disdain for one another. Now whispered like schoolchildren at a funeral. His aides whispered about rising stockpiles, emergency recall of long-abandoned defense fleets, even talk of a united front against Earth. But Urax didn't speak. He knew better. This isn't the end of a war, he said aloud. It's the beginning of a doctrine. His adjutant blinked. Sir? Urax rose, draining his glass, talon tapping against the side. The humans waited, observed, Let the galaxy rot on its own myths of superiority. And when they moved, they didn't just attack, they redefined the board. But sir, we still outnumber them. No. Yurek shook his head. We never counted correctly. We saw them as diplomats, traitors, outliers. We assumed patience meant weakness. But it wasn't restraint. It was refinement. He turned to the feed. The Goliath hovered above a shattered Kryn fleets as if studying its own effect. No pursuit. No monologue. Just presence. Across the sector, captured Kryn officers screamed into steel cells. One, a decorated captain named Carrick, had been recorded for psychological analysis. His footage now spread across fringe networks. Watched more for horror than intelligence. They didn't talk, Carrick hissed, one eye swollen shut. They didn't threaten, they smiled. We fired everything. It didn't matter. Their ship didn't even blink. Do you understand? It didn't blink. His words degraded into broken shrieking. A Terran medical officer calmly ended the feed. Expression unreadable. Back aboard the Goliath, Captain Elias Morrow read the reports without comment. The command deck was dim, the room stripped of celebration or ceremony. Every officer remained at their post. Silence wasn't enforced, it was simply the natural state of things. They're scared, Hale said, seated across from Morrow at the central console. Not just the Kryn, all of them. Morrow nodded once. Fear is useful, but temporary. They'll rally. Talk of coalitions has already started. Good, let them. Hale tilted his head. You want to fight? No, Morrow said. Closing the report, I want a reason. He rose, walking slowly to the forward viewport. The wreckage outside drifted like forgotten thoughts, illuminated by the dim starlight. We've given them something new to hate, he continued. And in time, they'll come to call that fear unity. Not because they've changed, because they're afraid of staying the same. Hale leaned back, watching him. You think they'll attack Earth? Eventually, Morrow said. Not yet. Not until they build their myths stronger. They'll talk, vote, make pacts, delude themselves into thinking they've understood us. And then we remind them they didn't. The comms panel lit up Vorgan command again. Hale tapped it. Ralzek again. Voice only. Put him through. The Vorgan's voice was quiet this time, calmer, reflective. This is Ralzek. I've been instructed to offer formal alliance. Channels between Vorgan remnants and Terran command. They wish to share resources, technology, territory access. They're ready to kneel. Morrow didn't speak. Ralzek continued. I've commanded fleets for longer than most of my soldiers. Have lived. I fought wars that reshaped sectors, but I've never seen a ship move the way yours did. Never seen a captain who didn't celebrate killing, only observed it. Still, Morrow said nothing. Ralzek finally asked, What do you want from us? Morrow turned from the stars, voice quiet, silence. Then obedience. The channel ended. Hale exhaled. That'll go down well with the diplomats. I'm not a diplomat, Morrow replied. And we're not building an empire. Empires rot. We're building precedent. Outside, a new signal pinned, another ship entering the system. Not Kryn, not Vorgan. An independent vessel, small, unarmed. The ship's identity flashed across the screen in a language unfamiliar to most. Morrow's eyes narrowed. Bring it up. The screen filled with the image of an alien monk-like figure, eyes wide and filled with a strange, quiet reverence. You are the human. The being asked Morrow gave no response. The alien bowed its head. I have traveled 12 light years. To ask you a question, Hale frowned. This ought to be good. The alien looked up again. Why now? Morrow paused, then answered. Because patience without purpose is cowardice. We've been patient long enough. The alien nodded. Once, closed the channel, and disappeared. No threats, no declarations, just understanding, and still the stars watched. The Kryn homeworld loomed ahead. A dark marble suspended in the cosmos ringed by titanium clouds, broken orbital scaffolds, and the battered remnants of what was once the most formidable defensive array in the known galaxy. Now it resembled a carcass, hollow, stripped, and vulnerable. Captain Elias Morrow stood at the Goliath's forward observation chamber, his hands clasped behind his back as the final approach commenced. The room was empty, except for Tactical Officer Vincent Hale, who stood off to the side, watching the tactical overlays scroll silently across the translucent glass. No one spoke. There was no ceremony, no final briefing. Everything that needed to be said had already been spoken or destroyed. The Goliath's hull gleamed under the pale light of Kryn's dying sun. Weapons dormant but armed. The ship didn't broadcast its arrival, simply came, and the galaxy watched. Admiral Krevok has sealed all transmission lines, Hale said, breaking the silence. No hails, no threats, no demands. Either he's preparing a trap, or he's waiting for execution. He's already chosen how this ends, Morrow replied. We're just here to confirm it. The sensors displayed faint energy spikes. Below planetary defense, arrays trying and failing to power up. Scattered Kryn frigates patrolled in disorganized orbits, not one of them daring to engage. Their weapons were locked. Their coms were silent. Morrow's face remained unreadable. Hale had served beside him through the silent wars, the deep drift cleansings, and the siege of Titan's grave. He had seen Morrow walk through fire and vacuum, through negotiation chambers and execution halls, with the same cold expression. But today, there was something different. Not anger, not satisfaction. Something closer to finality. They've made no move to evacuate, Hale said. No planetary arc ships launched. They're not trying to escape. They want to see if we'll do it, Morrow said. If humanity will take the final step, Hale's mouth twitched. Will we? Morrow didn't answer. The command deck, lit up with proximity alerts, a Kryn transmission flared a planetary broadcast, open channel, encrypted only by formality. Hale brought it up. Admiral Krevok appeared on screen, seated in a high-walled, blood-red war chamber. He looked older, not physically, but spiritually, like a statue that had begun to crumble beneath its own weight. His voice was measured. Captain Morrow, I address you not as a foe, nor as a supplicant. I address you because no other voice in this galaxy has meaning now. Morrow said nothing. Krevok continued. I have led empires, crushed rebellions, commanded genocides in the name of order. I've seen terror used like fire to consume the weak and illuminate the strong. But what I saw at SENNAR... that wasn't fire. It was void. It was something that did not burn, but unmade. He leaned forward. So tell me, Captain, is that what you are? The unmaking. Morrow stepped closer to the interface, expression unchanged. No, that's what you are. I'm the reckoning. Krevok's mandibles twitched. So, you've come to finish it. We came to give you a choice, Morrow said. The same one you never gave anyone else. Krevok's laugh was bitter and short. Surrender? No, Morrow replied. Irrelevance. The Kryn admiral stared at him for a long moment, then leaned back into his throne. I see. The feed cut. No alarms followed. No planetary shields activated. Just silence. Morrow turned to Hale. Transmit the final broadcast. Hale hesitated. Message prepared. I'll speak it live. A light blinked green. Across the galaxy, systems paused. Fleets halted in mid-jump. Political chambers silenced mid-argument. Every world that had tuned into the earlier feeds now braced for the words of the man who had unraveled an empire. Morrow's voice echoed with measured gravity, devoid of flourish. "This is Captain Elias Morrow of the Terran battleship Goliath. Let this transmission stand as record, warning, and invitation." He paused just long enough for the silence to settle. "We did not come to conquer. We did not come to claim. We came to correct." His tone sharpened slightly. "For generations, you believed cruelty equaled power. That domination was the final language of peace. That strength was determined by whose fleets were larger, whose laws were older, whose egos louder. You built empires atop graves. You called genocide diplomacy. You feasted while your people bled. And when we said nothing, you mistook that for consent. A beat. You were wrong." Outside, the Goliath shifted slightly. No weapons fired. No ships launched, just an overwhelming presence that dwarfed the Kryn planet below. Morrow continued, "We will not tell you what to do. We will not install governors, nor banners, nor beliefs. We will do one thing only. We will watch." He stepped forward, voice cooling further. "And if what we see reflects the sins of your past, we will return, not to negotiate, not to correct, to end." The feed ended. Hale stood still, blinking. "That's it." Morrow nodded. Captain Hale said slowly, "They were expecting a strike. A bombardment, glassing. You just gave them ... a mirror." Morrow's eyes locked onto the Kryn world. "That's more terrifying." Minutes passed, then an alert came from planetary systems. Mass weapon deactivation. Kryn fleets entering passive mode. Retreat orders issued across 17 systems. Hale exhaled. "They're standing down, every one of them, even their outer colonies." "It's done." "No," Morrow said, voice quiet. "Now it begins." As the Goliath turned from orbit, the void around it folded. The ship vanished into faster-than-light transit, leaving nothing but silence and memory behind. No fireworks. No flag. On Vorgen Prime, Commander Ralzek Thune stood on a tower balcony, watching the holographic replay of the final broadcast now playing across every public square. Citizens who had once prayed to ancient war gods now knelt not in worship, but in reflection. He whispered to himself, "They changed everything without firing a shot." In the Varn assembly, General Urax watched as dozens of faction leaders rescinded battle orders. For the first time in generations, border tensions faded without bloodshed. He lifted a glass in quiet salute to an absent figure. That ... was how you end an age. And deep in the darkness of uncharted space, unknown civilizations listened to the last words of a man from Earth and adjusted their TRAJECTORIES in the command chamber of the Goliath. Morrow stood alone, eyes locked on a blank starscape. Hale approached after a long pause. "You think they'll listen?" Morrow's voice was calm. "No." He turned, and for the first time in Hale's memory, a faint expression crossed his face: sadness, maybe, or something older. "But they'll remember." Behind him, the stars stretched endlessly, and ahead of them, a galaxy reconsidered what it meant to breathe.